Welcome to my YouTube channel on topic of why do the smartest kids think they can't do math and struggle with math? And where I ask questions, not how do you do something, what is 25 plus 32, for example, but what does it mean? Well, that's a simple case of addition. But in this session, we'll talk about algebra and the classic simple question, what x plus 2 equal 10, find x. And everybody can tell me what x is, but my question is, what does it mean? What does the question mean, find x? And let's talk about this. But if they're doing algebra, I present them with the following simple question, which almost everyone can answer. X plus 2 equal 10. Most kids, this is even presented to third graders, but in third grade, they don't specify it as x. But if you ask this of any seventh grader, eighth grader, they'll say, well, if I say find x or solve for x, they'll say 8. I say, great. But then I say, what does it mean to find x? So the way they present this is they say, find x. They'll see either say the problem with either they say find x, or it might say solve this equation. And I say to the students, solve this. They say solve this. I say, what does it mean? What does it mean to find x? And I tell the students, I said, I said, don't do this in school. But if I were your teacher, if I were in school, if I were in sixth or seventh grade, and I say, don't do this, and the teacher asked me to find x, I would say, hey, x is right there. I found it. Leave me alone. Right? What do you mean find x? What does it mean solve? What does it mean solve this? They say, well, they start going into, and they can't describe it. In fact, I looked in the internet to see, lots of tutorials on how to solve a one-step equation. That's what this is, a single variable one-step equation. And lots of people will tell you how to do it, and lots of kids, everyone knows how to do it. But my question is, what does it mean to find x? And then I show them something like 2x plus 5 equal 15. And again, so the students who know algebra better will say, okay, well, 2x equals 10, and therefore x equals 5. I said, great. What does it mean that x equals 5? And when I ask them that question, they can't answer it. So let's talk about so my hope, especially when I go to Algebra 2 students, okay, it becomes, so you can get through elementary school without understanding what this means. But when you get into high school and you get Algebra 2, students can learn mechanically how to do this, but where they get confused, and the reason, whenever I see, a kid or a parent who tells me that my child was doing fine in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade even, but in 9th grade they lost it, or in 10th grade they lost it. They did fine in Algebra 1, but they lost it in Algebra 2, or geometry. In almost every case, it's because they can do things mechanically, but at some point the math gets complex enough or abstract enough that they never understood the concepts, and they were able to do it mechanically, but after that they got confused. And once they get confused, it makes no sense. That's why they hate math. That's why the smartest kids get frustrated with math, because it stops making sense. Until 6th, 7th grade, they can still make sense out of it, or they can still succeed. But at some point, it doesn't make sense. And so I start with this question of what does it mean to find x? And so then I present it like this. What it means is, and this is even presented to third graders, but not in this way. They'll say to a third grader, you can say to a third grader, if I have a certain number of dollars in my pocket, I'm not telling you how much, I have a certain amount of money in my pocket. I'm not going to tell you how much that is. But if I had $2 more, I would have $10. What is that number? And of course, they'll say 8. That's what it means. What it means to find x is a variable. It can mean anything. It can be any value. The question we're asking here when we're saying find x, we're saying what value of x makes this equation true. Okay, x can be any. What confuses everyone is that x is a variable. It can represent any number. But when we put it in this context of an equation, what we're saying is what value of x, and what value of x makes this equation true. It turns out there's only one value of x. You can try different numbers. 1, for example, you tried 1 plus 2 is not equal 10. Well, 2 plus 2 is not equal 10. So it's a question. The question is, when you get to 8, 8 plus 2 does equal 10. So what algebra is the way to answer this question methodically, without guessing. In third grade, they have to ask this question. What they're asking you is to guess. They're saying, okay, guess and check. Okay, well, guess what? Try 1. Well, 1 plus 2 doesn't work. 2 plus 2 doesn't work, is not equal to 10. 3 plus 2, okay, until you get to 8, and 8 plus 2 equals 10. And they can just reason through that. And so one of the reasons for the dysfunction in algebra is we want the young kids in third grade to learn to think, to think through this logically, and we encourage them to what we call mental math. We encourage them to use mental math. We encourage them to look at x plus 2 or question mark some number plus 2 equal 10. Right? In the third grade, we'll say box, but what plus 2 equal 10. And we want them to think about that. Okay, they don't have to try 1 and then 2 and then 3. They can think about it and they say, but they don't understand. They don't recognize that they're going through a process. And then suddenly they get to seventh grade, and suddenly in seventh grade we turn the tables on them. Suddenly in seventh grade, we tell them, well, the way you did it before is good, but now we're going to teach you a formal process. Then we teach them what to do is x plus 2 equal 10. What you do is you subtract 2 from both sides, and 2 minus 2 is 0, and therefore x equal 8. In fact, the way they do it in school is, I hate this, but the way they do it in school often is they do this. They say they draw a scaffold, and you say subtract 2 from here and subtract 2 from here. And 2 minus 2 is 0, and therefore it's x plus 0 equals 8. And that formal process makes no sense to a kid who's been doing basically who can answer the question logically. Why do I got to go through this ridiculous long process, which takes way too long to answer a simple question? Obviously, if x plus 2 equals 10, it's obviously 8. But then I show them something that's really the same thing, but then they freak out. So the point is that we have to learn the processes because there are problems that are too complex to figure out in your head. Okay, but first to understand what it means that we're saying find x. Okay,